Good morning. My name is Kelly Shushak, and I'm the grateful pastor here at Edges. I'm really glad to be back with you again this week. Some of you were here last week when we made an announcement, and so I'm the one that gets to celebrate the victory with you this morning. Last week we made an announcement about an opportunity that we try to provide every summer for our partner school and its children. Kids and families get to fill out scholarship applications to go to camp. And every year, Edges tries to be a partner by helping those kids get to go to a camp that they wouldn't otherwise get to go to. And as of last week, we had raised $300, which wouldn't begin to take care of the kids who won't get to go to camp if we don't help. And so we told you last week that we needed more funds. What we needed exactly was $3,370, and to date, this morning at 9 a.m., we have $3,370. So what's so cool about that is that, one, these kids get to go to their first choice camp, not like their leftover camp that their family could afford or that was going to fit somebody's schedule. They got to say, if I could do anything this summer. So 16 families get to do something that 16 families wouldn't have gotten to do without your combined help in 1 week when we just made that announcement. And so what I think is that funding is often necessary in order to infuse any culture with hope. And I think you say yes to that kind of ask better than any group I've ever been a part of. So that's why I get to stand up here and say every week, my name is Kelly Shushak, and I am the grateful pastor in this place that gets to be part of those kinds of things. I imagine it brings even greater joy to us than it may for some of those kids who are going to get to go to camp. I'm just so happy about it. So that's all I've got to say about that. You know that I've said often here that I grew up in this no stoplight town in Texas. A tiny little blip on the map. But that tiny little blip on the map was 30 miles north of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. And many of our extended family and our friends lived in that Metroplex area. My grandmother, who also lived in our tiny little town just across the street from me for my whole life, would always tell folks from the bustling Metroplex that we would love to have them come visit us in the country. But she'd say they should come with one warning. And then she'd say, now when you drive here, when you drive out here, don't blink or you'll miss it. Is that a phrase that you know in Virginia? Okay, good. Because her statement, as you know, since you know the phrase, was mostly just a gentle jab at the size of our teeny tiny town. And about how easy it would be to pass through our little microplex quite quickly. But I was this happily rural kid. And I didn't know how to interpret colloquial sayings, so what I heard her saying was something like, if you're lucky enough to come to our special little town, you better keep your eyes open and make sure you don't miss one single thing we have to offer here. So it's in the spirit of the collision between my grandmother's intention and my interpretation that we bring you this series called Blink and It's Gone. Over the next 3 weeks together, we're going to consider a few of the many things that may seem to quickly disappear or vaporize. Things that will be rushing past or that will rush past us if we're not careful, and we'll miss what they might have offered us. So this series is an invitation to consider a few of those things and to ask how we might keep our eyes open and be sure that we don't miss one single special gift that might be waiting in them. So in this past week's email, which many of you got and responded to, thank you, we asked you to name some of the things that you've rushed by or that have rushed by you. Things that have felt done almost as quickly as they started. Things that seemed far too brief or not fully savored. Things that you wish you could replay or extend or do over differently. The official email question was, what's something in your life that feels like I blinked and then it was gone? I can tell you got the idea because you had a lot to say that was perfectly on point. Here's some of what you said. A moment in time was the most common answer. Moments just fly by. And then there was the year 2018. And then there was insert any other year. Lots of other years that some of you felt had rushed past. Some people said my 20s. And then insert any other decade. My 30s, my 40s. My kids, people said I blinked and they were gone. One person said my mom. Several of you said my money. 6, you can tell what's on people's minds in this community. 6 of you said college. It's that time of year. Long distance friendships and vacations and loved ones. And innocence, and time spent with family, and opportunity. So underneath all of your answers, I hear the urge that we haven't wanted these things to be so blippy, to use a word I made up. We've wanted them to last longer. Maybe like my interpretation of my grandmother's quote, it seems we'd love to go back to them in whatever way is the opposite of rushed, in a way that will allow us to savor more, to be present more, to keep our eyes open more and not miss one single thing. Well, of course, we can't go back. But what if we could let that insight inform a choice or two going forward? The hope is that this series will be a practical opportunity to explore a possible alternative, a helpful rhythm toward some things about which we'll otherwise be tempted to add to our list of, I blinked and then it was gone. So let me just start with a question that maybe pushes us toward an alternative rhythm. What are some things that need to be savored or lived? What are some things that need to be used with intention, not rushed through? To use a popular term these days, these might be places where it would be good to practice mindfulness. You want to just call out a few? What are some things that need to be savored, lived, used with intention? Go. Friends and family. Parenthood. Sunsets. Time with elderly people. Your health. Interactions with other people. Communing with nature.
Moments of silence.
Moments of silence.
A good meal.
A good meal. Unexpected joys. A church service. Wow, we can stay here a long time. Your work. Your children. A hug. A hug. A commute. Somebody say everything? Everything. Every week we go until someone says everything. Thank you, Janet. Yeah. I hope that opens up the box for you to begin thinking. Today I want to suggest one area toward which we could all probably use a little mindfulness help to avoid the almost inevitable I blinked and then it was gone. So since we're practicing, I thought it would be good today on this first week for us to start small, simple, with something surfacing so soon. Summer. How is that for lots of S's? The final S is our thing. Today's topic is summer, because any season can be one of a million relevant ways to practice intention, or to blink and it'll be gone. So here's my Exhibit A. Today is May 5th. On May 2nd, I was at the Fish Ladies. Who knows what the Fish Ladies are? The Fish Ladies are fish ladies who drive around in a truck, and you can buy fish from them on Thursdays in Blacksburg. Well, the Fish Ladies are the only place where I still write a check. Literally, the only place in my life where I still write a check. And so when I wrote out my check, I wrote April on the date line. When they told me it was May, I honestly almost argued. I hadn't even really considered that it was April yet. In my April, there had only been one day, and it was Easter. And so I thought we were just now coming into April. So I stood there for a minute, and I said, "Where did April go?" And they looked at me like, "You idiot. We do fish. We're not in charge of your calendar, you know?" Well, I bet that's exactly what's going to happen for summer to some of us too. Summer, for many who've been grinding through school schedules all year long, summer may feel like freedom, finally freedom. But then poof, it'll be gone. For others who experience summer as just the hot season between spring and fall, same thing, a few miserable days and then poof, it'll be gone. For many others, like my husband and many of you in the room, summer is the ramp up and get ready moment. It's the wind up to the next phase of action. And then blink, you're at go time. So since almost all of us experience some kind of rhythm shift in summer, I thought this might be an easy place to ask whether there's an alternative approach besides an after-the-fact feeling of, I blinked and then it was gone. And honestly, as an aside, I just love when we talk about these kinds of practical things in our worship conversations. Because when you talk about these things outside of here, sometimes it could be tempting to look for suggestions from pop culture or from like the front of the tabloid at the Kroger aisle, where the advice will be something like sizzle through summer. Nobody wants to sizzle through anything. I mean, really? So, but when we talk about these kinds of things here, it's because we're looking for holy possibilities. We're looking for choices about how we can live that God promises to support. That's why it's so important that we have conversations. And that's what makes the ideas from these conversations not just chatter, but alternatives that are worth considering as people who are trying to follow the example of Christ in the world. So it's big and it's really important, and thank you for doing it together each week. When I think about how God must hope that we will learn about intention and about mindfulness, I'm reminded of a favorite passage of Scripture. We can't read the whole thing today, but I would like to commend it to you for your reading this week. It's the Gospel of Matthew, and particularly the 6th chapter. And I love the 6th chapter because the whole 6th chapter of Matthew is like this primer on how to live with intention. And if you go and read it with that eye this week, I think you'll see what I'm talking about. Well, in the middle of making a powerful case for people to be mindful about their choices, the biblical author that we call Matthew offers some holy advice. And it's the kind of advice that if you blink, you're going to miss it. It's so tiny. It comes from verse 21, and here's what the author says. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So according to this advice, it looks like the equation is simple, right? Wherever you invest whatever you've got, wherever you spend the bulk of your time and your talents and your resources, that's where your treasure is. That's what you'll care about most deeply. That's where your heart is. You see it there, your heart will be also. But I'd like to ask you to follow this out with me for a minute, because if we apply this advice to our topic for today, we could say something like, wherever you invest your time or your talents or your resources this summer, that's what you're going to care about most deeply. Where your treasure is this summer, there your heart will be also. So when I read that, it sounds to me like the task is to focus on allocation of our treasures. to think about how we allocate our resources. It seems like it would be a good idea to try to organize our summer calendars and to collect all of our summer funds and money and to bottle up all of our summer energy. And then when we spin those things out, our hearts will be in a good spot. Only that hasn't worked for lots of us, right? I've spent lots of summers where I've done exactly that, lots of seasons where I've done exactly that. For many of us who've done this before, what we spend our summer on in all of these ways doesn't always equal what we want to care about most deeply. Why is that? Instead, I think it's often the same old result. I blinked and it was gone. I gave it all I had, I blinked, and it was up in smoke. So what I'm wondering is whether there's another way that we could put this biblical advice into motion, that we could practice. What if we worked backward? What if we focused on the desired result first? What if we started the question looking first at our hearts instead of at our treasures? So if we were going to do that, we might ask, what does my heart, what does my inner life need this summer? Where do I believe my heart should be this summer? We'd be starting at the end. And then we would ask, how do I mobilize all my treasures in support of what my heart really needs? Now, this may not seem so different quite yet, but hang with me. The next big question might be, how does a person know what their heart really needs? I would submit lots of us don't really know that or choose to know that, which is why we end up with a blink and it's gone about everything. Again, this is a place where I think it's really good to have a template that you can trust, which, as another aside, is one really big gift in having Christian language for things. Let me see if I can explain that. I think we would all agree, and by we I mean humans, would agree that all hearts always need at least one thing. Because it's how humans were created. All humans need to share love. I think everybody across all time and space would agree to that. Well, in the widest angle view, there are only two directions in which we can share love: with our Creator and with the creation. A Christian way of saying that, of having a template for how to say this, is to say that we have a need to love God, and we have a need to love people and to love creation, or the natural order. So if that's all true, all of us could live with deep intention by learning at least three things this summer. We could have a list of at least these three things. Love God this summer, my heart needs to love people this summer, and my heart needs to love creation this summer. Now, would you just stop in your thinking for a moment and ask whether these aspirations would have the ability to reposition a person? Whether your summer is destined to be a freedom ride from school, or whether it's going to be an impossible ramp up, or whether it's going to be a waited out dead zone. If you had these aspirations from any one of these places. So, these three are kind of set. But complementary to these universal heart desires, I bet God would like us to have the courage, the actual intention to ask another good question of ourselves. And that question might be, what does my particular life, what does my inner life need this summer? Do I need rest? Do I need energy? Do I need to make some new friends? Do I need new vision? Do I need forgiveness? Do I need clarity? Do I need courage to act? Do I need physical or emotional healing? Do I need to get busy? Do I need to slow down? What tops the list for you? That's the question we're going to spend a little time with this morning. What does my particular heart or inner life need this summer? In addition to those three universal things, what does my particular life, what does my heart need for this summer? Now, sometimes we don't talk about more personal questions in groups, but today we're going to try it. Know that it's okay if you want to talk or if you want to just listen. And know that we trust that God uses it to shape something in you, even if you don't know it. That's why it's so valuable. So we're going to take about 3 minutes. I'd like to ask you to get in groups of 5 or 6 folks. That makes it more comfortable when sometimes people want to just listen and not talk than if there's a group of just 2 or 3 people. So 3 minutes to think and talk about this question together. Make sure you at least know each other's names so you can have context. Make sure those of you who've been here for a while know how to include folks who are around you. And you've already gone, so go. All right, 10 seconds, guys. Hey, I'm sorry. All right, bring it back in. hard. So you can always talk more about that with the people who were in your group, especially if some of you got cut off from thoughts that were important to keep on having. Just know that there's some more time to do that later, hopefully. I hope that that specific exercise helped you this morning to know some specific needs of the heart. Those that you heard for other people, that raised some in your own self. So with those specific needs in mind for your own self, now we can return to the first part of that advice from Matthew. Wherever your heart needs to be, whatever were those things that you just discussed with each other, whatever is the roosting place inside you that you feel God wanting to invade, that now is where you can think about putting your time and your talents and your resources, your treasures. Now, I know you haven't had a lot of time to think about this yet, probably. But I have. I've been thinking about it for some time, and really deliberately this whole week. A true statement for me would be this summer, my particular heart needs to love God, to love people, to love creation. And the fourth thing I would add onto the list for me is to gain courage to act. So now my question becomes, how am I going to invest my treasures in those 4 areas? For me, this is how it all shakes out. So I gave my list a title. It's creative. It's called Kelly's Summer. My first point is love God this summer. How am I going to put my resources, my treasure toward that? So these are just my things. I know God most clearly through books, the scriptures, and other texts. For some of you, it could be podcasts or any number of things, but books are my thing. So I've ordered my summer reading list. It's on the screen there. And I'm going to just do that intentionally this summer with those books that I've already selected and purchased. Those books actually happen to be by the door on your way out. You're welcome to borrow them. We've tried this before. There's a little sheet. Please sign it if you take one. And if you get out there and there's only one book left, don't take it or I won't know God. So that's all. Other than that, you're welcome to borrow any of the books that you would like. Just please bring them back because, again, I will only know God 80% of what I would have known if you didn't bring the book back. So we'll just switch them out all summer long if some of those would be helpful for some of you. The second way I'm going to seek to know and love God this summer is I'm going to be with Edges weekly. Summer is a time when many of us are in and out a whole lot. I just want you to know that it helps me keep the rhythm to be with you every single week. So when I'm not here, I'll be with you on the live stream. And I'll be engaging in the conversations that you're engaging in together. Maybe if that needed to be part of your rhythm, it could be going to another church wherever you are. For me, that'll just be part of my rhythm. And in the love people this summer category, to me, that means serve. So I'm going to go to the Dominican Republic on June 9 through 16 to serve 120 young women together with 26 of you. The second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to serve with this community. There are lots of ways to serve, but I think serving is easier together, and the church is one of the ways that we learn how to do that together. And the church is the place I know best, so it's where I most often serve. So we have 2 opportunities coming up on June 16th. As a part of worship that day, we're going to go and serve together. You'll be hearing more about that. Maybe that's something that you would want to commit to as well, to put as an anchor on how you're going to practice this objective. And then on July 13th, you've heard me talk about before that we're beginning a habitat build in Blacksburg. We're going to build 7 family homes. And what that's going to do is it's going to make it equitable for people to live together in this town where it's too expensive for anybody to afford. That's important and it matters. And so the build is starting that week on July the 10th, and I called them and said, can we have the first Saturday? So we have the first Saturday reserved for us, July 13th. We're going to be the first people who get to go and help with that. And anybody can do it. So you'll be hearing more about that. Maybe that would make it onto your list too. The third thing I'm going to do is what I call uncommon acts, and that's because they're really uncommon for me. I'm terrible at birthdays and thank you notes and graduations and weddings, and I'm bad at all those things. But I'm going to use some of them to do some uncommon acts, and I did one this week just to practice, and I'll try to tell you about it quickly. My friend Joy has a daughter whose name is Julia. Julia is graduating from a Christian college up north on May 11th. And because of the Christian college that she's graduating from with a master's degree in social work, she was able to get a job at a Christian agency. Julia is also lesbian, and so when she got the job at this agency, they said, "We love you, we love your work, we thank you for being an intern with us for over a year, and we want to let you know that in the event that you ever choose to get engaged or married, we'll have to consider that your resignation." So Joy sent a note to a few friends and said, "Can you just love on Julia and tell her that her graduation is going to mean something someday, and can you just love on her?" So along with several other people, I tried to do that in an uncommon act. So I wrote Julia a poem about how the scriptures say that when you try to go back home and people don't accept you for who you are, you got to learn to shake the dust off your shoes. Sometimes that's really hard when there's a lot of dust, so I wrote this poem about how sometimes you need to just get new shoes. So then I bought Julia a new pair of shoes for graduation made out of recycled water bottles. The reason I did this is because I've wanted these shoes for a long time. Only they're $150, so I never buy them for myself. And I just thought, oh, what joy it would bring me to instead give them to someone else. And I only did that, had that crazy idea about the shoes, because this week my husband got a gift sort of like that in the mail from someone in Georgia who gave him a tie rack. Same kind of thing. It had a little story that went along with it about how his ties had helped. It's a long story, but anyway, he got a tie rack. So I thought, what can I give her that's like a real, I'm going to give her these shoes. And I wrote the poem only because someone in Edges writes poems almost every week and sends them to me. And it's so encouraging to me. So I thought, well, heck, I could probably do that too. So I wrote a poem about how you need new shoes sometimes to graduate to something new. So I'm going to do that. Whatever you do, it won't be as crazy as that. That's my point. Whatever you do, it's going to be more normal than what I'm doing. So then I'm going to love some creation this summer. And I bike. I used to bike a lot. I haven't biked recently because I'm getting old. But this week I went biking again, and I'm going to keep on doing it so that I can appreciate God's creation. And if you didn't know this, they just planted 26 trees on the Huckleberry Trail at the Christiansburg Inn with this little indicator that you can match the tree to the type. And you just can't go past that and pay attention and think, wow, God is so cool. Like, how many different kinds of just trees? So I'm going to bike, and I call that prayer. I don't pray while I bike. I think biking is prayer. All of life can be prayer. So that's what I'm going to do to love creation. And then another friend told me that whenever you're fighting something in life, God gave you all your senses to fight it. So I'm just going to think more and try more and pay attention to using all my senses, thinking about what do you taste, what do you touch, what do you smell, what do you hear, what do you see, and how might God shape those by the choices that you make. And then finally, the gain courage to act thing. I had to think a long time about this because I don't want to do this one. But I think it's what my heart does need, because I get stuck in cement when I can't make decisions with clarity. So for that objective, that thing I know my heart needs, I've been knowing it for a while now. I've been avoiding it for a long time. First, I'm going to write out things about which I've gotten some clarity. I'm going to make myself write them down. And then I'm going to check them hard with Scripture and with a few mentors and by giving them some time. And then I'm going to figure out what the first step is, and I'm going to take that step. So that's my list. That's my real list for this summer. And I want you to know that having it has already changed my perspective and my capacity to enter this season unrushed. To know that it's going to mean something. That I can value it as a present moment in which God may bring surprises and gifts just because of my mindfulness. So what's your list? I bet some of you, like me, need to either do it right now or not at all. So I'd like to offer us that opportunity if you'll bear with the conversation for a few more moments this morning. We're going to take a few minutes. As soon as I finish the instructions, nobody but Luke move, for what I'm going to call some holy list making. For you to ask God what your heart needs, and for you to write your bullet points out. I'm going to suggest that most of us will want to start with a creative title like My Summer. And then just figure out what your bullet points need to be. I'm going to suggest that probably God would be honored if you'd choose the 3 universal ones: love God, love people, and love creation. And from there, you're going to think about what other things your particular heart needs. Maybe it would come from some of the things you heard mentioned or that you said earlier in your groups that you don't want to miss. And Luke is sitting at the piano because he right now is going to begin underscoring this time with beautiful music. Look at this. In a minute he will. Anyway, just know that when he starts playing, it's on purpose. He's just gonna offer you music for your time of reflection. And then after you have your bullet points, what you're going to do is you're going to ask yourself, what specific treasures, what are the resources of time and energy and talent and money that I need to invest toward developing my heart in this way, toward partnering with God to develop my heart in a way God would want to do it. So you're going to have about 3 minutes from here on out to get started. And you probably won't finish it here, but maybe it will get you started enough that you can keep at it. And after you've had a little bit of time, you don't need to worry about the time at all. I'll come back up where we'll share in communion together in the spirit of the one who showed us what it really is to live well in every moment. Now take your time and do what you need to do, and I'll see you in a few.